With less than 24 hours before his execution, his final request wasn't for a priest, a final meal, or even his daughter. It was to see his billionaire boss, the man whose name built his paycheck and destroyed his life. But what happened in that prison hall would shatter an empire, halt the execution clock, and prove that even a dying man's voice can silence the mighty. Before we begin, if stories about truth, justice, and second chances move you, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's dive in. That morning, the air inside Grayford State Penitentiary felt heavier than usual, as if the concrete walls themselves knew what was coming. Every sound, the metallic clink of keys, the slow echo of boots on polished floors, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead carried a weight that pressed down on everyone who walked those halls. In cell block D, Liam Miller sat on the edge of his narrow cot, hands loosely clasped between his knees, eyes fixed on the cold gray floor. He wasn't the same man who had walked through those gates 7 years ago. Time and isolation had carved deep lines into his face, softened the fire that once burned in his eyes. His orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame. The man who used to carry his daughter on his shoulders, who scrubbed office floors until they gleamed, who believed the system would protect the innocent, that man was gone. The guards expected the usual final requests: a steak dinner, a phone call to a distant relative, maybe a letter to be sent posthumously. But when Warden Graves entered the cell and asked the question every condemned man hears, Liam's voice was low, steady, unshaken. "I want to see James Whitaker." A pause. Some guards exchanged uneasy glances. Others stiffened. A condemned man choosing a billionaire over family? Over comfort? Unheard of. Whitaker wasn't just any name. He was power, politics, influence. His face was on magazine covers, his voice in Senate hearings, and his company, Whitaker Industries, employed thousands. But for Liam, James Whitaker wasn't just a name in a headline. He was the man who gave him a job when no one else would, the man whose building he cleaned every night, the man whose empire stood on a foundation Liam had once accidentally uncovered and paid the price for knowing. In his final hours, Liam didn't want forgiveness from strangers. He wanted answers, and he wanted the man who let him fall to look him in the eye one last time. Warden Graves leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. He'd approved strange last requests before: a harmonica, a priest who never showed, a meal from a restaurant that had closed years ago. But bringing a billionaire into a maximum security prison on execution day? That was unprecedented. In the control room, officers debated. "It's a waste of time," one said, arms crossed. "The man's guilty. Let him go quietly." An older officer, Officer Hall, quieter than the rest, spoke up. "Whitaker gave him a job once. Maybe he just wants closure." Another voice chimed in. "Or maybe he wants to spit in his face. Either way, it's not our call." Warden Graves requested the file. Liam's record inside was spotless. No fights, no infractions, no escape attempts. And in the personal notes section, there it was: former employee of Whitaker Industries, convicted of murdering his supervisor, Frank Doyle. Claims innocence. No appeals left. After a long silence, the warden nodded. Under strict supervision. Visitation hall. 10 minutes only. Word spread fast. Through the corridors, past the cafeteria, into the administrative wing. Some guards shook their heads. Others whispered about the audacity of it, a janitor summoning a king. But within the hour, the request had traveled beyond the prison walls, across state lines, through marble lobbies and glass-walled boardrooms, until it landed, with a quiet knock, on the polished mahogany desk of James Whitaker himself. The billionaire stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, the city sprawling beneath him like a chessboard. He held the phone to his ear, listening to his assistant repeat the message. "Liam Miller, death row. Execution scheduled for tonight. He's requested to see you." Whitaker's jaw tightened. The name stirred something: recognition, unease, guilt he'd buried under years of silence. He placed the phone down and stared at his reflection in the glass. "He shouldn't even remember my name," Whitaker whispered to no one. But he did. And now, the ghost of a decision Whitaker had once made was calling him back. "This is just the beginning. Stick with us, because what happens next will leave you speechless. And if you're already hooked, drop a comment down below." By mid-afternoon, a black sedan pulled up to the gates of Grayford. James Whitaker stepped out, immaculate in his navy suit, silver-streaked hair combed back, expression unreadable. 2 private security guards flanked him, But prison protocol was clear: no outsiders beyond the checkpoint. He would enter alone. Well, almost alone. Inside the visitation hall, sunlight streamed through barred windows, casting long shadows across the sterile floor. The room smelled of disinfectant and old paint. 4 guards stood at attention. And in the center, flanked by 2 officers, was Liam Miller. His wrists were cuffed loosely in front of him. His bare feet made no sound on the cold concrete. His eyes tired, but clear, locked onto the doorway. Then Whitaker entered. The 2 men stood across from each other, one in tailored wool and polished leather, the other in faded orange and scuffed sneakers, worlds apart, but bound by something neither had spoken aloud in 7 years. Whitaker's throat tightened. Up close, Liam looked smaller, older, broken, but his gaze, steady, unwavering, held a strength Whitaker hadn't expected. "You asked for me," Whitaker said, his voice measured. "Why?" Liam took a slow breath. When he spoke, his words were quiet, but they cut like glass. "Because the truth started in your building, Mr. Whitaker, and it should end with you." The guards shifted. Whitaker's jaw clenched. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel: fear. Liam took a step forward, eyes never leaving his. "You once told your employees, 'Nothing stays hidden forever.' I wrote that down. I believed it." He reached into the pocket of his jumpsuit slowly, carefully, under the watchful eyes of the guards, and pulled out a small, weathered envelope, stained, folded, fragile. He placed it on the metal table between them. "This is for you. Read it, and then tell me again that I'm guilty." Whitaker stared at the envelope. His hands trembled as he reached for it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a torn printout of an email. The date, 2 days before the murder. The sender, his own CFO. The subject line, "We need to talk, or I talk to them." Whitaker's breath caught. The color drained from his face. Officer Hall, standing near the corner, noticed. He'd been watching the billionaire's body language since he walked in. And now, seeing the shift, the crack in the armor, he knew something was wrong. "Where did you get this?" Whitaker whispered, voice hoarse. Liam's expression didn't change. "You can clean 100 floors before anyone looks at you. People talk when they think you're invisible." Guards moved to end the meeting, but Whitaker raised a hand, stopping them. He looked at Liam, really looked at him, and for the first time, saw not a convict, but a man. "I didn't know," Whitaker said, barely audible. "I swear. I didn't." Liam's voice was ice. "You didn't stop it either." As the guards stepped forward to escort Liam back to his cell, he locked eyes with the billionaire one last time. "I'm not asking for mercy, Mr. Whitaker. I'm asking you to remember this face when they tell you I'm gone." The door closed. Whitaker stood alone in the empty hall, the envelope still trembling in his hands. Officer Hall stood in the hallway long after Whitaker had left. He couldn't shake the look on the billionaire's face, the fear, the guilt, the recognition. Something about this case didn't sit right. It never had. He pulled out his phone and made a call. And with that single decision, the threads that had been buried for 7 years began to unravel. To understand how a janitor ended up on death row, how a billionaire's empire was built on silence, and how one envelope could change everything, we have to go back. Back to the night it all began. Back to the building where Liam Miller cleaned floors, and stumbled onto a secret that would cost him everything. Liam's story didn't end in that prison. It exploded beyond those walls, and brought an empire to its knees. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe that truth can still win, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of courage, redemption, and justice. The next incredible story is waiting for you right now on your screen. Click it. You won't regret it. Thanks for watching, and remember, nothing stays hidden forever. Officer Hall stood in the hallway long after Whitaker had left. He couldn't shake the look on the billionaire's face, the fear, the guilt, the recognition. Something about this case didn't sit right. It never had. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. His uncle, Marcus Hall, had worked in Whitaker Industries' accounting department years ago. Retired now. But maybe he remembered something. Anything. The call connected. "Uncle Mark? It's Ryan. I need to ask you about Whitaker Industries. About 7 years ago. Do you remember anything unusual?" A long pause. Then, quietly, "Why are you asking?" "Because a man's about to die for something I'm not sure he did." Another pause. "Meet me tonight, and don't tell anyone." Hall hung up, pulse quickening. Somewhere in the tangled web of this case, there was a thread no one had pulled yet. and he was about to start tugging. 3 hours before the meeting, James Whittaker stood in his penthouse bathroom, the marble cold beneath his bare feet. Steam from the shower fogged the mirror, but he wiped it clear with a slow, deliberate hand. His reflection stared back sharp jawline, silver-streaked temples, eyes that had closed billion-dollar deals and crushed competitors without flinching. But today, those eyes held something unfamiliar. Doubt. He reached for his razor. The ritual began. Shaving was methodical, controlled, every stroke precise, every angle calculated. Just like his life. Just like his empire. He'd built Whittaker Industries from his father's crumbling textile company into a multinational conglomerate. 15,000 employees, 4 continents, a name that opened doors and silenced critics. Control was everything. He moved to his walk-in closet rows of suits organized by season, color, occasion. He selected the navy brioni, conservative, respectful, the kind of suit you wore to a funeral or a boardroom ambush. He knotted his tie with practiced ease, checking the Windsor knot in the mirror. Perfect. Cufflinks, sterling silver, engraved with his initials. Watch a vintage Patek Philippe, inherited from his grandfather. Shoes Oxfords, polished to a mirror shined by his valet that morning. Every detail was armor, every choice a statement. I am in control. I have always been in control. But as he stared at himself in the full-length mirror, tailored and untouchable, a voice whispered in the back of his mind, liar. Meanwhile, in cell block D, Liam Miller sat on the edge of his cot, a small piece of paper resting on his knee. A stubby pencil, barely longer than his thumb, trembled in his calloused fingers. The fluorescent light above flickered intermittently, casting shadows that danced across the concrete walls. He'd asked for paper, 1 sheet, 1 chance to say what he couldn't say in person. Dear Emma, he paused. What do you say to a daughter you'll never see grow up? How do you explain that the world broke her father and called it justice? I know you're scared. I know you don't understand why Daddy can't come home. But I need you to know something, baby girl. I didn't do what they said I did. I never hurt anyone. And today, I'm going to make sure the truth doesn't die with me. You're the reason I wake up every morning. You're the reason I kept fighting, even when no one believed me. And no matter what happens, I need you to remember Daddy loves you. More than the sky is big. More than the ocean is deep. Be brave, Emma. Be kind. And never stop asking questions. Love always. Daddy. He folded the note carefully, pressing it against his chest. A guard would deliver it to his lawyer. The lawyer would give it to the foster family. Maybe Emma would read it someday. Maybe she'd understand. Or maybe she'd grow up hating a ghost. Liam closed his eyes and let himself remember. 7 years earlier, the building was always empty by 9 p.m. Liam liked it that way. Quiet, peaceful. Just him, his mop bucket, and the hum of the industrial vacuum. Whittaker Industries tower 43 floors of glass and steel, and Liam Miller cleaned every inch of floors 12 through 20. He'd been there for 2 years. Hired after his wife Sarah, passed from cancer. Emma was only 3 then. Barely old enough to understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. Liam needed steady work, decent pay, health insurance for Emma's asthma. The janitorial company contracted with Whittaker Industries didn't ask questions. They needed bodies. Liam needed a lifeline. He was good at the work, thorough, reliable, invisible. People walked past him like he was part of the furniture. Executives discussing mergers while he emptied their trash. Assistants complaining about their bosses while he wiped down their desks. No one saw him. No one cared. Until the night he saw something he wasn't supposed to. It was late past midnight, floor 17. Executive accounting wing. Liam was emptying a shredder bin when he noticed a paper jam. He pulled it out carefully, not wanting to tear anything important. That's when he saw it. An invoice, triple printed. Same vendor, same date, same amount, but 3 different account codes. 1 legitimate, 2 buried in subsidiaries he'd never heard of. He frowned. Probably a mistake. He smoothed the paper and placed it on the desk. But then he saw another, and another. Coded payments, dummy accounts, offshore transfers. Patterns a janitor shouldn't recognize, but Liam had worked in bookkeeping before Sarah got sick. He knew what laundering looked like. His heart pounded. This wasn't a mistake. This was systematic. He took a photo with his old flip phone, just in case, just to be safe. The next night, he found his supervisor, Frank Doyle, in the break room. Frank was in his 50s, gruff but fair. He'd hired Liam personally. Frank, I need to talk to you about something I found. Frank looked up from his coffee, suspicious. What kind of something? Liam showed him the photo. Explained the patterns. Frank's face went pale. Where did you get this? Floor 17, accounting wing. It was jammed in a shredder. Frank stood abruptly, grabbing Liam by the arm. His voice dropped to a hiss. You listen to me. You forget you ever saw this. You delete that photo. You keep your head down and do your job. But Frank, this is... I know what it is. Frank's voice cracked. And I know what happens to people who ask questions. You have a daughter, Liam. Think about her. Liam pulled his arm free. I am thinking about her. I'm thinking she deserves a world where people do the right thing. Frank's expression softened. Regret flickered across his face. Then God help you, son. Because they won't. 2 days later, Frank Doyle was found dead in the parking garage. Blunt force trauma. A bloody wrench beside his body. Liam's fingerprints were on it. He'd used that wrench a week earlier to fix a leaky pipe in the executive bathroom. It had been in his cart. Tools he used every day. Tools anyone could have taken. But no one cared about that. The police arrived at his apartment at 6 a.m. Emma screamed as they cuffed him in the hallway. Neighbors watched through cracked doors. A news crew filmed his perp walk. Janitor arrested in brutal murder of supervisor. At trial, the prosecution painted him as unstable. A widower struggling financially. Angry at his supervisor for denying him a raise. The wrench. The fingerprints. The opportunity. The defense was underfunded, overworked, and outmatched. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty. Back to the present. Whitaker adjusted his tie one last time, staring at his reflection. A man who had everything, and nothing. Liam folded the letter to his daughter, hands steady despite the tears streaming down his face. A man who had lost everything, except his truth. 2 men, 2 worlds, bound by a secret one had buried and the other refused to forget. In a few hours, they would stand face to face in that sterile visitation hall, and one of them would walk away changed forever. Officer Hall drove toward his uncle's house, the envelope burning in his mind. Something about this case was wrong, and tonight, he was going to find out what. The visitation hall at Grayford State Penitentiary wasn't built for comfort. It was a room designed for goodbyes, sterile, cold, unforgiving. Pale green walls that had faded to the color of illness. A metal table bolted to the concrete floor. 4 chairs, equally immovable. And high above, 2 barred windows through which morning sunlight cut diagonal lines across the space, carving the room into sections of light and shadow. Officer Hall stood by the door, arms crossed, watching as they brought Liam Miller in. 4 guards surrounded him, standard protocol for death row inmates in their final 24 hours. Liam moved slowly, not from fear, but from the weight of chains around his ankles. His hands were cuffed in front of him, the metal biting into his wrists. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame, a size too large, emphasizing how much weight he'd lost over the years. But his eyes were steady. He didn't look at the guards, didn't flinch when they positioned him in the chair facing the door. He simply sat, hands folded on the table, and waited. One of the guards, a younger man named Torres, leaned down and whispered, "You sure about this, Miller? You could have asked for anything. A meal, a priest, time with..." "I'm sure," Liam said quietly. Torres nodded and stepped back. The 4 guards took positions at each corner of the room, silent, watchful. Officer Hall checked his watch. 10:47 a.m. Whitaker was late. Then, the sound of footsteps. Not the heavy boots of corrections officers, but something softer, leather soles on polished concrete. The door opened. James Whitaker entered, and the room seemed to shrink. He wore his navy suit like armor perfectly tailored, not a thread out of place. His silver hair was combed back, his jaw clean-shaven, his expression carefully neutral. 2 officers flanked him, but they seemed almost decorative compared to his presence. Whitaker was a man used to filling rooms, used to commanding attention without saying a word. His eyes swept the space, the guards, the table, the chains, and finally settled on Liam. For a moment, neither man spoke. Whitaker stepped forward slowly, hands clasped behind his back. He stopped 3 feet from the table, studying the man in front of him like an artifact in a museum, something from another life. "You asked for me," Whitaker said, his voice low and controlled. "Why?" Liam lifted his head, their eyes locked, the silence stretched taut as a wire. Then Liam spoke, and his voice, though quiet, carried the weight of years. "Because the truth started in your building, Mr. Whitaker. It should end with you." Whitaker's jaw tightened. He glanced at the guards, then pulled out the chair across from Liam and sat. The movement was deliberate, controlled. A negotiation tactic he'd used 1,000 times, never let them see you rattled. The truth, Whitaker repeated slowly. The truth is you were convicted by a jury of your peers. The truth is the evidence was overwhelming. The truth, Liam interrupted, his voice sharper now, is that you gave me a job when no one else would. Whitaker blinked. Thrown. Liam leaned forward slightly, the chains clinking softly. 2 years. That's how long I worked for your company. 2 years cleaning floors, emptying trash, fixing broken things no one else noticed. You walked past me once. Floor 17. You were leaving late, talking on your phone. I held the elevator door for you. Whitaker's expression flickered recognition, surprise, discomfort. You looked at me, Liam continued. Really looked at me, and you said, "Thank you. Have a good night." Most people didn't even see me, but you did. And I thought you were different. Whitaker's hands, folded on the table, tightened. Liam, I didn't. You gave me a chance, Liam said, his voice cracking slightly. And then you took everything away. I didn't take anything, Whitaker snapped, his composure slipping. You killed a man. You were tried and convicted. I had nothing to do with. You had everything to do with it. Liam's voice was ice now. You knew. Maybe not about Frank. Maybe not about the wrench or the frame-up. But you knew something was wrong in your company. You knew people were stealing. You knew they were covering it up. And when it all went sideways, when Frank ended up dead and I ended up here, you said nothing. Whitaker's face paled. I couldn't. You could. Liam's voice dropped to a whisper. You just didn't want to. The room felt smaller, tighter. Officer Hall shifted his weight, watching the billionaire carefully. Something in Whitaker's body language had changed. The confidence was cracking. You don't understand the complexity of, Whitaker began. I understand perfectly, Liam interrupted. I understand that truth is inconvenient when you're building an empire. Whitaker slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Guards tensed. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't frame you. You didn't stop it. Liam's eyes burned. You knew your company was dirty. You knew people around you were capable of this. And when the easy answer landed in your lap, a janitor with a motive, fingerprints on a wrench, a quick conviction, you let it happen. Because it was cleaner that way, safer, better for business. Whitaker opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Liam leaned back, his voice softening. You used to tell your employees something. I heard you say it at a company meeting once. They made us all attend, even the cleaning staff. You stood up there in your perfect suit, and you said, in this company, we believe in accountability, because nothing stays hidden forever. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. I wrote that down, Mr. Whitaker. I believed it. I thought you meant it. Whitaker's hands trembled. His carefully constructed mask crumbled, piece by piece. Liam, if I had known, if I had any idea. But you did know. Liam's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. You just chose not to look. The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Hall watched as Whitaker's shoulders sagged, as his expensive suit suddenly seemed too large, as the weight of 7 years pressed down on him all at once. Then Liam moved. Slowly, carefully, he reached into the breast pocket of his jumpsuit. The guards tensed, hands moving toward their belts. But Liam's movements were deliberate, non-threatening. He pulled out a small, weathered envelope folded, stained, fragile, and placed it gently on the table between them. He slid it across the metal surface. It came to rest directly in front of Whitaker. This is for you, Liam said quietly. Read it, and then tell me again that I'm guilty. Whitaker stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. His hand hovered over it, trembling. What is this? He whispered. Liam stood slowly, chains rattling. The guards moved to escort him back. The truth you didn't want to find, Liam said. 7 years too late. As the guards led him toward the door, Liam paused and looked back one last time. I'm not asking you to save me, Mr. Whitaker. I'm asking you to remember this moment. When they tell you I'm gone, remember that you had a choice, just like you did 7 years ago. The door closed behind him. James Whitaker sat alone in the sterile room, sunlight slicing across his perfect suit, his trembling hands finally reaching for the envelope that would shatter everything he'd built. Officer Hall watched from the corner, mind racing. Whatever was in that envelope, the world was about to change. The door had closed. The condemned man was gone. But James Whitaker remained frozen in his chair, staring at the small envelope on the table as if it might detonate at any moment. The guards shifted uncomfortably. Officer Hall stepped forward. Mr. Whitaker, We need to clear the room. Whitaker didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the envelope, weathered, stained with what looked like coffee or sweat, the edges frayed from being folded and unfolded too many times. His hand trembled as he reached for it. The paper was thin, cheap, the kind used in ancient office printers. He lifted the flap carefully, almost reverently, and slid out a single sheet. It was torn along one edge, as if ripped hastily from a larger document. The ink had faded slightly, but the text was still legible. An email chain, printed, dated, from David Chen, CFO, to James Whitaker. Date, the 14th of March 2018, 11:47 p.m. Subject, we need to talk, tonight. James, I can't keep doing this. The offshore accounts, the dummy invoices, the fabricated expenses, it's gotten out of control. I've been going through the books, and there's over $47 million unaccounted for in subsidiaries that don't even exist. Someone's going to notice. The auditors, the feds, someone. I'm coming to you first because I respect you. But if you don't clean this up, I'm going to the authorities. I have copies of everything. Consider this your only warning. David. Below it, a response, sent 2 hours later. From James Whitaker. To David Chen. Date, the 15th of March, 2018, 1:52 a.m. Subject, we need to talk. Tonight. David, let's not make rash decisions. Meet me tomorrow. We'll discuss options. There are ways to handle this that don't involve destroying everything we've built. Trust me. J.W. Whitaker's breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred. The words swam on the page. He remembered this email. Of course he remembered. He'd sent it from his home office at 2 a.m, after David had called him in a panic. He'd told him to calm down, to wait, to trust the process. 2 days later, David Chen was found dead in his apartment. Gas leak. Accidental, the coroner ruled. Tragic. The CFO had been under stress, everyone knew that. And the same night, Frank Doyle, a supervisor in building services who'd been asking questions about financial discrepancies, was beaten to death in a parking garage. 2 deaths, 2 inconvenient men, 1 very convenient scapegoat. Whitaker's hands shook violently. The paper slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the table. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Officer Hall moved closer. Mr. Whitaker? Are you all right? Whitaker looked up sharply, as if remembering where he was. His face was ashen, his eyes wide. Where did he get this? Hall frowned. Sir, I think you need to sit back down. Where did he get this? Whitaker's voice cracked, echoing off the concrete walls. The door opened. 2 guards stepped aside, and Liam Miller was brought back in, still in chains, still calm. Whitaker surged to his feet, pointing a shaking finger at him. How? How did you? This was private correspondence. This was deleted? Liam finished quietly. Yeah, probably was. Whitaker's chest heaved. Then how? Liam tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. You can clean 100 floors before anyone looks at you, Mr. Whitaker. People talk when they think you're invisible. Assistants print things they're not supposed to. Secretaries leave trash bins full of secrets. ET guys restore emails they claim are gone forever. He took a step closer, chains clinking softly. I wasn't just a janitor. I was a ghost. And ghosts see everything. Whitaker staggered back, gripping the edge of the table for support. This doesn't prove I didn't. David's death was an accident. The police investigated. It was ruled accidental. Liam interrupted. Just like Frank's murder was open and shut. Just like my conviction was overwhelming evidence. Funny how convenient the official story always is. I had nothing to do with their deaths. Whitaker's voice was raw now, desperate. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't order anyone killed. I didn't. You knew. Liam's voice was soft, but it cut like a blade. Maybe you didn't pull the trigger. Maybe you didn't swing the wrench. But you knew your CFO was threatening to expose corruption. You knew your company was dirty. And when he ended up dead, when Frank ended up dead, when I ended up in here, you didn't ask questions. You didn't dig deeper. You let it happen. Whitaker's face crumpled. I thought it was handled. You thought it was easier not to know. Liam's eyes burned into him. That way you could sleep at night. Whitaker sank back into his chair, head in his hands. If I had known God, if I had any idea they were going to, but you did know, you just chose not to see. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Officer Hall's hand drifted to the document on the table. This wasn't just a last request anymore. This was evidence. Evidence that had been buried. Evidence that changed everything. Torres stepped forward. All right, that's enough. We need to. I didn't frame you, Whitaker said suddenly, looking up at Liam with red-rimmed eyes. I swear to you, I didn't know they were going to frame you. I didn't even know your name until the trial. Liam studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, I believe you. Whitaker blinked, surprised. I believe you didn't know my name, Liam continued, because I was nobody to you. Just another worker. Just another number. And when they needed someone to take the fall, someone invisible, someone no one would fight for, I was perfect. The words hung in the air like smoke. Torres moved to escort Liam back. Time's up, Miller. Liam allowed them to turn him toward the door. But at the threshold, he stopped. He looked back over his shoulder, and his eyes found Whitaker's one last time. I'm not asking for mercy, Mr. Whitaker, he said quietly. I'm asking for you to remember this face when they tell you I'm gone. Remember that you had a choice, that you could have dug deeper, that you could have asked questions, that you could have cared. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Remember that a man died because he was convenient to forget. The door closed. James Whitaker sat alone in the empty room, the email printout staring up at him from the table. His empire, his carefully constructed world of power and control, felt like it was crumbling around him. Outside the door, Officer Hall watched the billionaire through the small window, watched his shoulders shake, watched him bury his face in his hands. Then Hall looked down at the document on the table. Moving quickly, casually, he stepped back inside. Sir, I need to clear the room now. Whitaker didn't look up, didn't move. Hall approached the table, picked up the email printout, and made a show of folding it. I'll return this to you outside, sir. But as he turned away, his other hand slipped to his pocket. The small camera on his phone, already positioned, already aimed, captured a perfect image of the document before he folded it. By the time Whitaker stumbled out of the visitation hall 10 minutes later, flanked by officers and looking 20 years older, Officer Ryan Hall had already sent the photo to 3 people: his uncle, the prison's legal advisor, and his own private email. Something was wrong with this case. Something had always been wrong. And now, for the first time in 7 years, someone was going to do something about it. Officer Ryan Hall couldn't sleep. He sat in his small apartment 20 miles from the prison, the lights off, staring at his phone. The photo of the email, David Chen's warning to James Whitaker, glowed in the darkness. He'd read it a dozen times. Each time, the words felt heavier. Someone's going to notice. I'm going to the authorities. Consider this your only warning. 2 days later, Chen was dead. Frank Doyle was dead. And Liam Miller was sentenced to die for a murder Hall was now certain he didn't commit. He glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Too late to call anyone. Too early to stop thinking. His mind drifted back 8 years of family barbecue at his uncle's house. Uncle Marcus, retired now, had worked in Whitaker Industries' accounting department for nearly 2 decades. Hall remembered him nursing a beer on the back porch, unusually quiet. You all right, Uncle Mark? Hall had asked. Marcus had looked at him with tired eyes. You ever work somewhere and realize the foundation's rotting? That everything you thought was solid is just hollow? What do you mean? Marcus had hesitated, then shook his head. Dirty money, Ryan. That's all I'll say. Dirty money dressed up in expensive suits. Just be careful who you work for. Not everyone who looks clean actually is. At the time, Hall had shrugged it off. His uncle was always cryptic when he drank. But now, staring at that email, the words echoed. Dirty money. Hall picked up his phone and dialed. 3 rings. Then a groggy voice. Ryan, do you know what time it is? Uncle Mark, I need to ask you about Whitaker Industries, about the accounting irregularities, about David Chen. A long pause. Then, the sound of movement. Marcus lowering his voice. Where are you? Home. Why? Stay there. I'm coming over. And Ryan, don't talk about this on the phone. The line went dead. 40 minutes later, Marcus Hall sat across from his nephew at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he wasn't drinking. His face was drawn, older than Ryan remembered. David Chen was a good man, Marcus said quietly. Honest. Too honest for that place. What did he find? Marcus sighed. Offshore accounts, shell companies, money moving through subsidiaries that didn't exist. Chen spent months tracing it. He came to a few of us in accounting, asked if we'd seen anything unusual. Most people looked the other way. I told him to be careful. Did he say who was behind it? He didn't have to. That much money doesn't move without someone at the top knowing. Marcus looked up. When he died, they called it an accident. Gas leak. But David was paranoid by then. He'd installed carbon monoxide detectors in every room. I helped him pick them out. Ryan's jaw tightened. What about Frank Doyle? Doyle was building services, but he had access everywhere: executive floors, server rooms, file storage. If Chen was gathering evidence, Doyle would have been exactly the kind of person who could help him. Marcus paused. 2 days after Chen died, Doyle was murdered. And a week later, a janitor was arrested with overwhelming evidence. Too overwhelming, Ryan said. Way too overwhelming. Marcus met his nephew's eyes. What did you find? Ryan showed him the photo. Marcus read it slowly, his face paling. Jesus, he whispered. If this gets out. It needs to get out. Ryan, you're talking about taking down one of the most powerful men in the state. His lawyers will bury you. His connections. A man is going to die in less than 18 hours, Ryan interrupted. I don't care about his lawyers. Marcus stared at his nephew for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. What do you need? I need you to go on record. I need you to tell someone official what you just told me. Who? Ryan stood, grabbing his jacket. The one person in that prison who gives a damn about the truth. At 7:15 a.m., Officer Hall knocked on the door of Linda Carter's office. She was already at her desk. The prison's legal advisor rarely slept before an execution day. She looked up, surprised. Hall? What are you? I need you to look at something. He closed the door behind him and placed his phone on her desk. The email photo displayed. And I need you to tell me I'm not crazy. Carter picked up the phone, eyes narrowing as she read. Her expression shifted: confusion, recognition, alarm. Where did you get this? Liam Miller gave it to James Whitaker yesterday. I documented it. Carter sat back slowly. This is exculpatory evidence. This should have been disclosed during discovery. This changes everything. Hall finished. Miller was framed. The CFO was threatening to expose corruption. He died. Doyle was helping him. He died. Miller stumbled onto it. He was convenient. Carter's mind raced. She'd reviewed Miller's case file years ago, routine oversight. The evidence had seemed solid. Fingerprints, motive, opportunity. But if this email was real, we need to reopen the forensic evidence, she said suddenly. The murder weapon. If Miller was framed, there has to be proof, Hall said. That's what I'm thinking. Carter grabbed her phone and dialed. This is Linda Carter, legal counsel at Grayford. I need to speak to the state forensic lab. Yes, it's urgent. It's about the Miller case. The execution is tonight. By 2 p.m., 3 forensic analysts were hunched over a metal table in the state crime lab. The wrench evidence item #47B, the weapon that killed Frank Doyle, lay under ultraviolet light. Dr. Sarah Kemper adjusted the wavelength, squinting through magnification goggles. Then she froze. Oh my God. Her assistant looked up. What? There. She pointed to the handle. Under UV light, a faint residue glowed, barely visible, but unmistakable. That's not organic. That's synthetic. Latex? Latex film. Kemper's voice was tight. Someone lifted these prints and transferred them. This wrench was planted. The room went silent. Kemper straightened, pulling off her goggles. This man didn't kill anyone. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to make sure he went down for it. Her assistant picked up the phone. I'll call the state attorney's office. Call the governor's office too, Kemper said quietly. Because if we don't stop this execution, we're about to kill an innocent man. At 9:43 p.m., James Whitaker sat in his penthouse office, the city lights glittering below him like cold stars. His phone rang. Private line. His head attorney. James, we have a problem. Whitaker's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? The state attorney's office just filed an emergency motion to halt Miller's execution. They're reopening the case. Forensic evidence has been challenged. And James, they're asking questions about David Chen. The room tilted. Whitaker gripped the edge of his desk. What does that mean? It means someone connected the dots. Miller's case, Chen's death, the financial irregularities. They're digging, and if they dig deep enough, they'll find it all, Whitaker whispered. Not just the money, the cover-up, the frame job, everything. Whitaker's hand trembled. Can we stop it? A long pause. James, I don't think we can stop this anymore. I think the best we can do is prepare. The line went dead. Whitaker sat in the darkness. His empire built over 30 years, brick by brick, deal by deal, cracking beneath him like thin ice. Somewhere in a prison cell, a man he'd condemned with his silence was about to be saved by the very truth he'd tried to bury. And for the first time in his life, James Whittaker understood what it meant to lose control. Outside his window, the city hummed on, indifferent. Inside, a king realized his throne was made of lies. The first crack appeared at 6:47 a.m. A notification on James Whittaker's phone. Then another. Then a flood. He was still in his office. He hadn't left since the call from his attorney. Hadn't slept. Hadn't changed out of his navy suit, now rumpled and creased. His tie hung loose around his neck like a noose. The first headline appeared on the Financial Times mobile app. Breaking. Whittaker Industries faces federal investigation over alleged fraud. His blood ran cold. By 7:15 a.m., every major outlet had picked it up. CNN. Billionaire's empire under scrutiny. Whistleblower's execution. Halted amid new evidence. Wall Street Journal. Whittaker Industries stock plummets as corruption probe widens. Reuters. Death row inmate's last request unravels decades-old cover-up. Whittaker's phone lit up like a firework. Board members, investors, attorneys, PR advisors, every call more frantic than the last. He let them ring. Outside his window, the morning sun rose over the city, indifferent, relentless. Down on the trading floor, Whittaker Industries stock opened at $287 per share. Within 20 minutes, it had dropped to $198. By 9 a.m., it was in freefall. His assistant, Margaret, knocked softly before entering. Her face was pale, her hands clutching a tablet. "Sir, the board is demanding an emergency meeting. The SEC has issued a formal inquiry." And, she hesitated. "There are reporters in the lobby. Security can't hold them much longer." Whittaker didn't look up. "Cancel the meeting." "Sir, cancel it. All of it." His voice was hollow. "Tell them I'm unavailable." Margaret stared at him, bewildered. In 15 years, she'd never heard him sound like this, defeated. "Mr. Whittaker, with all due respect, you can't just—" "I can't fix this, Margaret." He finally looked at her, and she barely recognized the man in front of her. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face gaunt. "This isn't a PR problem. This isn't a legal strategy. This is the truth. And you can't spin the truth." She swallowed. "What do you want me to tell them?" "Tell them." He trailed off, staring at the city below. "Tell them I'm sorry." By noon, the board had convened without him. By 2 p.m., 3 senior executives had resigned. By 4 p.m., federal agents had arrived at corporate headquarters with warrants. Whittaker watched it all unfold on the news. His empire, built over 3 decades, dismantled in less than 8 hours. His phone buzzed. His oldest friend and personal attorney, Michael Driscoll, calling for the 5th time. "This time," Whittaker answered. "Michael. James, where the hell are you? The board is in chaos. The feds are seizing documents. You need to get in front of this before—" "I knew." Silence. "What?" Whittaker's voice was quiet, steady. "I knew something was wrong. 7 years ago, David Chen came to me. He told me about the offshore accounts, the dummy companies. He was panicking. I told him to calm down, to trust me, that we'd handle it quietly. James, don't say this over the phone. Don't say this to anyone." 2 days later, he was dead. Whittaker's voice cracked. "They said it was an accident, a gas leak. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. Because if it wasn't an accident, then that meant someone in my company, someone close to me, had killed him to keep him quiet. James, stop. You need a lawyer present before you. I already have a lawyer, you. And I'm telling you the truth." Whittaker's hand trembled. When Frank Doyle was murdered, when they arrested Liam Miller, it was convenient, too convenient. A janitor with fingerprints on the weapon. A quick conviction. Case closed. "You didn't know he was innocent." "I suspected." The words hung heavy. "I suspected foul play. I suspected Miller might have been framed. But I didn't ask questions. I didn't dig deeper. Because if I did, it would open everything up. The fraud, the cover-up, the deaths. My company would collapse. My reputation would be destroyed. So you stayed silent." "So I stayed silent." Whittaker closed his eyes. "And now, a man almost died because I was a coward." Michael's voice softened. "James, what are you going to do?" "The right thing, finally." He hung up. 300 miles away, in cell block D of Grayford State Penitentiary, Liam Miller sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the wall. Warden Graves had visited 2 hours ago. The words still echoed in Liam's mind. Your execution has been stayed. The state attorney's office is re-examining evidence. New forensic findings suggest discrepancies. Liam hadn't responded, hadn't moved, hadn't allowed himself to feel anything. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break you worse than despair ever could. The warden had continued. I can't make promises, Miller, but there's a chance, a real chance. After he left, Liam had sat in silence for hours. The noise of the cell block faded, the fluorescent lights dimmed, and slowly, cautiously, something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Not hope, not yet, but possibility. He lay down on his cot, exhausted, and closed his eyes. Sleep came quickly, dragging him under. In the dream, he was standing in a park. Not just any park, the one near their old apartment, the one with the rusted swings and the oak tree that dropped acorns every fall, the one where Sarah used to take Emma on Sunday afternoons. But the park was different now, empty. The swings hung still. The playground equipment was gone, replaced by bare dirt. The oak tree was a stump. Liam walked forward slowly, and that's when he saw her, Emma. She sat on the ground near the tree stump, wearing the yellow dress Sarah had bought her for her 4th birthday. Her hair was longer than he remembered. She was drawing something in the dirt with a stick. Emma? His voice cracked. She looked up. Her eyes, Sarah's eyes, found his. She smiled. Hi, Daddy. Liam dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Baby girl, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She tilted her head, confused. Why? Because I wasn't there. Because I couldn't protect you. Because you're here now, she said simply. He reached for her, but his hands passed through her like smoke. She wasn't real. This wasn't real. It was a dream. A memory. A ghost of what he'd lost. Emma went back to drawing in the dirt. Liam watched, throat tight, as she carved out shapes: a stick-figure man, a stick-figure girl, a house with a crooked roof. Are you coming home, Daddy? She asked without looking up. I don't know, he whispered. She stopped drawing, looked at him with eyes too wise for a child. You have to, because I've been waiting. The park began to fade. The light dimmed. Emma's figure blurred at the edges. Wait, Emma, don't. I'll be here, she said softly. When you're ready, I'll be waiting. Liam woke with a gasp, tears wet on his face. His heart pounded. The cell was dark, silent. But for the first time in 7 years, the weight on his chest had lifted just slightly, just enough to breathe. Outside his cell, Officer Hall walked past on his rounds. He paused, glanced through the bars, and saw Liam sitting up, hands covering his face. Hall didn't say anything, didn't need to. He simply nodded respect between two men who understood what it meant to fight for the truth and continued walking. In his penthouse across the state, James Whitaker stood at the window, watching his empire burn on every screen, every headline, every news ticker. For the first time in decades, he felt something other than control. He felt human. 6:47 p.m. 13 minutes to execution. The walk from cell block D to the death chamber was exactly 247 steps. Liam Miller had counted them once, months ago, when they'd taken another inmate down that same corridor. He'd listened to the footsteps fade, the doors clang shut, the silence that followed. Now it was his turn. 4 guards surrounded him, protocol for the condemned. His ankles were shackled, limiting his stride to small, shuffling steps. His hands were cuffed in front of him, wrists raw from 7 years of metal. He wore a clean white t-shirt and orange pants, no shoes. The concrete was cold beneath his bare feet. Officer Hall walked behind him, jaw tight, eyes forward. He'd volunteered for this duty. If Liam's last moments were going to be witnessed, Hall wanted to be there. To remember, to carry the weight if everything they'd fought for failed. They passed through the first checkpoint. A steel door buzzed open, then closed behind them with mechanical finality. No one spoke. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed. Somewhere in the distance, another door clanged. The prison breathed around them alive, indifferent, eternal. Liam's heart beat steady. Too steady. He'd made peace with this. Written his letter to Emma. Said his goodbyes to the few who cared. Delivered his truth to the one man who needed to hear it. If this was the end, at least he'd go knowing he'd tried. They reached the second checkpoint. The death chamber door loomed ahead, thick, reinforced, painted an unsettling shade of institutional green. Warden Graves waited outside, clipboard in hand, expression carefully neutral. Behind him, through a small window, Liam could see the chamber itself, sterile, bright. A gurney in the center, leather straps hanging loose like sleeping serpents. "Liam," the warden said quietly. "It's time." Liam nodded. The door opened. The room smelled of antiseptic and something else, fear, maybe, or despair, absorbed into the walls over decades. The gurney waited, spotlights overhead casting it in harsh relief. Medical equipment lined the walls. IV stands, heart monitors. A phone read, direct line to the governor's office, hung on the far wall. It hadn't rung in 11 years. 2 medical technicians stood ready, faces obscured by surgical masks. They avoided eye contact. "Standard procedure. Don't humanize the condemned. Please lie down," one of them said. Liam climbed onto the gurney, the leather cold against his back. The guards removed his shackles, then strapped his arms, legs, and torso down. Tight, immovable. The straps bit into his skin. He stared at the ceiling. White tiles, fluorescent lights, a small water stain in the corner, shaped vaguely like a bird. The technicians worked efficiently, swabbing his arms, finding veins, inserting IV lines, 2 in his left arm, 2 in his right. Backup systems, redundancy. The state took no chances. Liam barely felt the needles. His mind was elsewhere, in a park that didn't exist anymore, with a daughter he'd never see grow up, with a truth he'd fought 7 years to tell. Behind thick glass, the witness room filled. Linda Carter stood in the front row, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Officer Hall stood beside her, jaw clenched, eyes burning. A few reporters. A representative from the state attorney's office. And in the back corner, standing alone, a man in an expensive suit who'd arrived late. Collar turned up, face half hidden. James Whitaker. He'd come to watch, to witness, to carry the weight of what his silence had cost. 6:56 p.m., 4 minutes to execution. Warden Graves entered the chamber, holding a laminated card. The final protocol. He'd read it 17 times in his career. Each time felt heavier than the last. "Liam Miller, you have been sentenced to death by the state for the murder of Frank Doyle. Do you have any last words?" Liam turned his head slightly, looking through the glass toward the witnesses. His eyes found Hall first, then Carter, then, finally, Whitaker. When he spoke, his voice was calm, clear. "I'm innocent. But if my death brings the truth to light, then I didn't die for nothing." He paused. "Emma, if you ever hear this, Daddy loves you. More than the sky is big." Warden Graves nodded and stepped back. He raised his hand, ready to signal the technicians. 6:58 p.m. The first drug, sodium thiopental, to render him unconscious was loaded into the IV line. 6:59 p.m. The warden's hand began to lower. Then, alarms blared. Loud, jarring, echoing off the concrete walls. Red lights flashed above the door. The technicians froze, hands hovering over the IV controls. The chamber door burst open. A young woman in a rumpled suit, legal aide from the state attorney's office, stumbled in, breathless, clutching a folder, her face flushed. "Stop. Stop the execution." Warden Graves spun. "What?" "Stay of execution." She thrust the papers toward him, gasping for air. "Judge's order just came through, new evidence, forensic re-examination." The warden snatched the documents, eyes scanning frantically. His face went pale. Behind the glass, Linda Carter's hands flew to her mouth. Officer Hall's eyes filled with tears. "Read it," one of the technicians said, voice shaking. "Read it out loud." Warden Graves cleared his throat, his voice thick. "By order of the State Superior Court, the execution of Liam Miller is hereby stayed pending full forensic review and evidentiary hearing. Evidence has emerged suggesting wrongful conviction." The room erupted. Guards exhaled. The legal aide collapsed against the wall, shaking. The technicians stepped back from the IV lines, hands trembling. Liam lay perfectly still on the gurney, staring at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He couldn't process it, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Liam." Warden Graves stepped beside him, his voice breaking. "You're not dying tonight." Liam's eyes flooded with tears. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His body shook against the restraints. 7 years of fear, rage, despair, and now something impossible. Hope. An officer rushed forward, unbuckling the straps with shaking hands. The IV lines were carefully removed. Liam sat up slowly, legs dangling off the gurney, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Behind the glass, Officer Hall and Linda Carter embraced, sobbing. The reporters frantically made calls, fingers flying across phones. And in the back corner, James Whitaker stood motionless, tears streaming silently down his face. Across town, 7:04 p.m., in a modest house in the suburbs, a 9-year-old girl named Emma Miller sat on the couch beside her foster mother, watching cartoons. The program cut to breaking news. This just-in execution halted at Grayford State Penitentiary. Liam Miller, convicted 7 years ago in the murder of Frank Doyle, has been granted a stay of execution following new forensic evidence suggesting he may have been wrongfully convicted. The foster mother gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Emma sat forward, staring at the screen as her father's face appeared a mugshot from 7 years ago. "That's my daddy," she whispered. The foster mother pulled her close, tears falling. "I know, baby. I know." On the screen, the headline scrolled, "Breaking. Wrongful conviction suspected. Billionaire's company under investigation. Innocent man nearly executed." Back in the chamber, Liam stood on shaking legs, guided gently toward the door by Officer Hall. As they passed through, Liam looked back one last time at the gurney, the straps, the IV stands, the room where he was supposed to die. "Come on," Hall said softly. "Let's get you out of here." As they walked down the corridor, this time away from death toward life, Liam whispered, "Is this real?" Hall gripped his shoulder. "Yeah, man, it's real." For the first time in 7 years, Liam Miller allowed himself to believe in tomorrow. The grand jury convened 3 weeks after Liam Miller's execution was halted. 12 citizens, 47 witnesses, hundreds of documents, and one question that had haunted them all: who killed Frank Doyle and David Chen? The answer came from an unexpected source. On day 6 of testimony, a forensic accountant named Patricia Voss took the stand. She'd spent 2 decades tracking financial crimes for the FBI. She was precise, methodical, impossible to rattle. "Following the money," she began, pulling up a projection screen. "We discovered a series of wire transfers originating from a Whitaker Industries subsidiary account. Between March 2018 and June 2018, approximately $2.3 million was moved through 3 shell companies before landing in an offshore account registered to a Marcus Hale." The room stirred. "Who is Marcus Hale?" the prosecutor asked. "Former head of corporate security at Whitaker Industries. He resigned abruptly in April 2018, 1 month after the murders, and left the country. He's been living in the Cayman Islands under an assumed identity ever since." The prosecutor leaned forward. "And what was the purpose of these payments?" Voss didn't hesitate. "Hush money. Payment for services rendered, specifically eliminating threats to the company's financial structure." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Over the next 3 days, the case against Marcus Hale solidified like concrete. Surveillance footage placed him near David Chen's apartment the night of the gas leak. Cell tower records put his phone 2 blocks from the parking garage where Frank Doyle was murdered. And most damning, a deleted email recovered from the company server. From Marcus Hale to encrypted recipient. Date: the 16th of March 2018, 3:22 a.m. Subject: problems handled. Both loose ends tied up. Janitor's prints planted. Wrench disposed of in evidence. No trail back to us. Wire the second half by Friday. The jury foreman's voice was steady when he read the recommendation. "We find sufficient evidence to indict Marcus Hale for 2 counts of first-degree murder, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." Within 48 hours, Interpol had located Hale in Grand Cayman. He was extradited, arrested, and charged. But the question that haunted everyone remained. Who gave the order? James Whitaker sat in a conference room at the FBI field office, flanked by 3 attorneys. Across from him, 2 federal agents and a state prosecutor waited. He'd been here for 6 hours, questioned, pressured, dissected. His lawyers had advised him to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. Stay silent. Let them prove their case. But Whitaker was done hiding. "I want to make a statement," he said quietly. His lead attorney grabbed his arm. "James, I strongly advise." Whitaker pulled free. "I'm done." The prosecutor leaned forward, activating a recorder. "Mr. Whitaker, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Do you understand?" "I understand." "And you're waiving your right to remain silent?" "I am." A long pause. Then Whitaker began. "I didn't order the murders. I want that on record. I didn't tell Marcus Hale to kill anyone. But," his voice cracked, "but I knew. Not at first. Not when David Chen died. I believed it was an accident. I wanted to believe it." He took a shaky breath. But when Frank Doyle was murdered 2 days later, when the janitor Liam Miller was arrested with overwhelming evidence, I started asking questions internally, quietly. I didn't want a scandal. I didn't want the press digging. So I asked Marcus Hale directly if there was anything I should know. What did he say? The prosecutor asked. He said, "The problem's been handled. The company's safe. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." Whitaker's hands trembled. And I didn't. I didn't ask. I didn't investigate. I didn't push back. Because as long as I didn't know for certain, I could tell myself I wasn't complicit. The room was silent, but I was complicit. My silence gave him permission. My willful ignorance cost 2 men their lives and condemned an innocent man to death row. His voice broke completely. I chose my empire over the truth, and I will carry that for the rest of my life. The prosecutor's expression didn't change. "Mr. Whitaker, you understand this confession will likely result in charges of accessory after the fact, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy?" Whitaker nodded. "I understand. And you're prepared to face those consequences?" "I'm prepared to finally do the right thing." The fallout was swift and merciless. Within a week, James Whitaker was indicted on 4 counts. The board of Whitaker Industries voted unanimously to remove him as CEO. His assets were frozen pending investigation. His name, once synonymous with success, became a cautionary tale. New York Times, from boardroom to courtroom. The fall of James Whitaker. Bloomberg, how silence became complicity. The Whitaker case. Forbes, empire of lies. The true cost of willful ignorance. 6 months later, he pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison. "Mr. Whitaker," the judge said, "you had every resource, every advantage, every opportunity to seek the truth. Instead, you chose convenience. You chose comfort. And an innocent man nearly paid with his life. Justice delayed is justice denied, but today, justice will be served." The gavel fell. James Whitaker, billionaire, was led away in handcuffs. 4 weeks after the stay of execution, Liam Miller stood in the same processing room where he'd entered 7 years ago. But this time, the door ahead of him led out. The warden handed him a manila envelope. "Your personal effects," and this. Inside was a document bearing the governor's seal. Full and unconditional pardon. In light of overwhelming evidence of wrongful conviction, and in recognition of a grave miscarriage of justice, Liam Edward Miller is hereby exonerated of all charges and granted full pardon. The state extends its deepest apologies for the injustice suffered. Liam stared at it, tears blurring the words. Officer Hall stood nearby, out of uniform for the first time. "Ready?" Liam nodded. The gates, solid steel, 30 feet high, topped with razor wire, began to open. Sunlight poured through the widening gap. Real sunlight, not filtered through bars, not rationed by walls. Freedom. Liam took a step forward, then another. His legs shook. His heart pounded. After 7 years of concrete and fluorescent lights, the open sky felt impossibly vast. And there, just beyond the gate, stood a small figure in a yellow dress. Emma. She saw him and started running. Liam dropped to his knees on the pavement, arms open, and she crashed into him with the force of 7 years of longing. "Daddy," she sobbed into his chest. "Daddy, you came home." Liam held her so tightly he thought he might break. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm here. I'm never leaving again." Behind them, news cameras captured the moment. Officer Hall wiped his eyes. Linda Carter stood beside him, smiling through tears. And 300 miles away, in a federal correctional facility, James Whitaker sat on a narrow cot in an 8x10 cell. The walls were concrete. The window was barred. A small television mounted in the corner showed the evening news. In a stunning reversal, Liam Miller walks free today after 7 years on death row. New evidence revealed he was framed as part of a corporate cover-up. The camera showed Liam walking through the prison gates, his daughter in his arms, sunlight on his face. Whitaker watched in silence, tears streaming down his face. The man he'd condemned was free. The man who'd built an empire was caged. Justice, delayed but not denied, had finally spoken. And in that moment, Whitaker understood what Liam had tried to tell him in that visitation hall. Nothing stays hidden forever. Not the truth. Not the guilt. Not the price we pay for our silence. The morning air tasted different. Liam Miller stood just beyond the prison gates, Emma still wrapped in his arms, and he breathed deeply for the first time in 7 years. The air wasn't recycled, wasn't filtered through concrete and steel. It carried the scent of grass, car exhaust, Distant rain. Life. Emma pulled back slightly, her small hands cupping his face. Her eyes, Sarah's eyes, searched his, as if confirming he was real. "You're really here," she whispered. "You're really, really here." Liam's throat tightened. She'd grown so much. The last time he'd held her, she'd been 3, still speaking in half-sentences, still small enough to carry on his hip. Now she was 10. Her face had lost its baby softness. Her voice was clearer, stronger. She'd lived 7 years without him. "I'm here, baby girl," he managed. "I'm so sorry I was gone so long." "It's okay, Daddy." She smiled through her tears. "You're home now." Home. The word felt foreign. He didn't have a home. No apartment, no job, no life waiting for him. Everything he'd built before his arrest was long gone. But as he looked at his daughter, still clutching the worn teddy bear he'd given her on her 2nd birthday, he realized home wasn't a place. It was her. Officer Hall approached quietly, hands in his pockets. "Liam, there's a transition coordinator here to help with housing, social services, job placement. Whenever you're ready." Liam nodded, unable to speak. Linda Carter stood beside a dark sedan, files in hand. "We've arranged temporary housing in the city, 1st month's rent covered. And there's a victims' compensation fund. Wrongful imprisonment settlements take time, but we're expediting yours." Liam looked at them both, these strangers who'd fought for him when the world had given up. "Thank you. I don't know how to." "You don't have to," Hall said firmly. "You just have to live. That's enough." Emma tugged his hand. "Can we get pancakes, Daddy? I haven't had pancakes with you in forever." Liam laughed, a sound he'd almost forgotten he could make. "Yeah, sweetheart. We can get pancakes." As they walked toward the car, Liam glanced back one last time at Grayford State Penitentiary. The towers, the walls, the razor wire glinting in the morning sun. The place that had tried to erase him. He'd survived. And now, he would live. 6 days later, Federal Correctional Institution, Lakeview. James Whitaker sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the concrete floor. His cell was 8 by 10, roughly the size of his former walk-in closet. A metal toilet, a small sink, a narrow window that showed a sliver of sky. This was his world now. He'd been processed 3 days ago. Stripped, searched, assigned a number. Inmate 84736. No longer Mr. Whitaker, CEO. No longer James Whitaker, billionaire. Just a number in an orange jumpsuit. The other inmates knew who he was. Some whispered, others glared. A man who'd condemned another to death row through his silence wasn't popular in a place where injustice was currency. Whitaker didn't blame them. A guard appeared at the bars. Whitaker, male. He looked up, surprised. His attorneys sent documents regularly, but personal mail was rare. Most of his former friends had vanished the moment the indictment came down. The guard slid a single envelope through the slot. Plain, white, no return address. Just his name and inmate number written in careful, slightly uneven handwriting. Whitaker opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the kind sold in prison commissaries. The handwriting was the same, deliberate, measured. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm writing this from a small apartment in the city. It's not much. 1 bedroom, a couch that's seen better days, a kitchen table where Emma and I eat breakfast every morning. But it's mine. It's ours. It's free. I heard about your sentencing. 8 years. I won't pretend to know what that feels like for you. I won't pretend I don't feel some sense of justice in it. But I also know that revenge doesn't heal anything. It doesn't bring back the years I lost. It doesn't undo what happened. You asked me once, in that visitation hall, how I got the evidence. The truth is, I spent 2 years collecting pieces. A janitor sees things no one else notices. I found that email in a recycling bin on the executive floor. Someone had printed it, then thought better of it. But they didn't shred it. They just threw it away, like I was thrown away. But here's what I've learned, Mr. Whitaker. Bitterness is its own kind of prison. I spent 7 years locked in a cell. I won't spend the rest of my life locked in hate. You were right about something you once said. I did write it down, and I've thought about it every day since. You said, nothing stays hidden forever. The truth came out. Justice delayed. Painful, imperfect finally happened. So I'm writing to tell you this. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it. Not because it erases what happened. But because I deserve to be free. Truly free. And I can't be free while I'm still carrying the weight of what you did and didn't do. You'll have time now. Time to think. Time to face what your silence cost. Time to decide what kind of man you'll be when you walk out of there. Use it wisely. Emma asks about you sometimes. She saw you on the news. She asked if you were a bad man. I told her you were a man who made bad choices. There's a difference. I hope you find your way back. I hope you learn what I had to learn, that the truth, no matter how painful, is the only foundation worth building a life on. Take care of yourself, Mr. Whitaker. Liam Miller. Whitaker's hands trembled. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. He read it again, then a third time. I forgive you. He didn't deserve it. He knew that. But the words settled into his chest like a weight lifting, not erasing the guilt, but transforming it into something else. Responsibility. Purpose. A reason to become better than he'd been. He folded the letter carefully and placed it under his pillow. Then he lay down on the narrow cot, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since his arrest, he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he could learn to breathe again. 3 months later, Liam and Emma walked through the city park on a Sunday morning. It wasn't the park from his dream that one had been torn down years ago, but this one had swings and a slide and an oak tree that was just beginning to turn gold with autumn. Emma ran ahead, laughing, her yellow dress bright against the green grass. Liam followed slowly, savoring every step. The sun was warm on his face. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. A couple jogged past. Life, ordinary and beautiful, unfolded around him. He paused beneath the oak tree, tilting his face toward the sky. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting barred shadows across his skin, lines of light and dark, just like the prison windows that had framed his world for so long. But this time, the bars were an illusion, a memory. He could walk away whenever he wanted. "Daddy, come push me," Emma called from the swings. Liam smiled and walked toward her, leaving the shadows behind. As Liam and his daughter walked into the rising dawn, the last echoes of the prison door faded behind him. What began as a man's final wish ended as proof that even in death's shadow, truth can still find its voice and silence the mighty. This is the power of truth, the courage of the forgotten, the resilience of a father's love. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe that justice, no matter how delayed, is always worth fighting for, please hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories of redemption, courage, and second chances, because every voice matters, every story deserves to be told, and the truth, no matter how buried, will always find a way. The next incredible story is waiting for you on your screen right now. Click it. You won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing. And remember, nothing stays hidden forever.